Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. Welcome to episode number 2 of Ryan and Russell Read and Review. Welcome back, Ryan.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to talk about this book.
Today we are here to talk about Cloud Cuckoo Land by Anthony Doerr. Now, I don't know about you, Ryan. I can't imagine winning the Pulitzer for your last book and the amount of pressure that comes with the follow-up.
Yeah, I remember Michael Cunningham, who won, I think, the Pulitzer for The Hours.
Yes.
And his follow-up book is like, I can't beat that. So I'm just going to write this weird book, which surprisingly, Specimen Days reminded me a lot about this book. So it's like full circle. I don't know if you've read that, but it's 3 interconnected short stories all revolving around like these objects. They're connected through these objects over time. So different, but similar.
Interesting. Well, so if you are, this is the first time you've come to a Ryan and Russell Read and Reviewed, a couple of things that we want to put out there. We do not, we're not going to give you a bio of Anthony Doerr. You all can go out and do that on your own. We are basically going to just talk about this book. After Ryan will give us a brief sort of plot synopsis, and we're going to just talk about it and really just give you our feelings as we go through it. Now, we do our best to not spoil anything, as always, but let's be honest, some things are going to come out. So we'll do our best not to spoil any of the big things, but we do have to talk about the book and some of the stuff in it. So there you go, fair warning, no comments about spoils down below. But we do really encourage you to comment and have a discussion with us, because we definitely want to enter a dialogue about these books that we're really just focusing on for like 20-25 minutes together. So I'm going to hand it over to Ryan to try to summarize Cloud Cuckoo Land, out now, by the way, from Scribner. And it is a beautiful, beautiful hardback too. I think it's absolutely beautiful. So Ryan, what is this book about exactly?
Well, this is a chunky book. Yes. This is over 600 pages. It's a longer book, and it was a little daunting for me, but it was very readable right from the get-go. This book is about 3 different time periods where it follows about 2 people in each. The first we meet is Constance, who is in a spaceship traveling from Earth to a new planet with her family, and the computer on board is named Sybil. And then we have Omir and Anna, who are in 15th century Europe, Constantinople, right before the fall of Constantinople to the Ottomans. And then we have Zeno and Seymour. And Zeno is working with these children at a library in Idaho to put on a play that he translated from the ancient Greek that kind of connects all these stories together. And Seymour is a troubled youth who enters the library to cause some trouble.
And that is probably the easiest way to describe a book that is intricate and interconnected and complicated.
It's hard because I don't want to spoil anything, and we definitely won't spoil the endings, but there's 3 different stories. So it's almost like 3 different books. So you have to talk about, I think, a little bit of what's happening, and you learn what's going on at the beginning.
Yeah,
of a lot of these.
Yeah, and I think it's important to start with the book that you mentioned, or the play that you mentioned that Zeno is producing, because that original Greek text is at the center of all of these narratives. So basically, each section sort of starts with an excerpt from this original Greek tragedy about a man who is trying to find his way to a certain place in order to experience something. I'm going to keep it very vague in that because it's got a lot of sort of Greek mythological sort of aspects to it. And we get every section sort of introduces us to his story and then sort of leads into these characters' lives as well. And that is sort of throughout the whole entire narrative in so many different ways. It is so clever.
Mm-hmm. It is so clever. I think when you start, based on my conversations with a lot of people and my own feelings, it feels confusing. You don't know how this play relates. You don't know who these characters are, but please have faith in the book because it does a really great job of weaving everything together in a way that's really satisfying.
Yeah. Well, that was, I think for me, I was so impressed that Anthony Doerr was able to keep everything in. I mean, you're in Constantinople in the 1400s, you're in modern day Idaho, and then you're in like the space future, right? And keep them all distinct, all of them moving forward, but also connecting all of that. That's a very impressive feat. We've all read the books that try to do all these different things and something drops off or something's just not as well formed. All of these characters, Anna and I believe Omir, is that I think how we say his name in Constantinople, they were fully formed, you know, and still in oh my gosh, I'm totally blanking on the guy who's producing the play. Zeno, his life, we get a flashback. He's been through a world war. You know, you just learn so much about these people that it was really, really impressive that he was able to build 6 distinct, amazing characters, as well as write a Greek tragedy play.
Yeah, essentially, yes. It's very impressive. With Anna and Omir, they're separate in their stories. Like Anna's in Constantinople and Omir was born with a hair lip and has a number of issues with his own family and because of that. And so he leaves and travels towards Constantinople with the Ottomans and his 2 oxen. There were so many moving parts. Like the interaction with those cows, those steer oxen was amazing. Like I've never been so moved by a relationship with domesticated animals like that. Like
I know.
It was amazing.
You know, this is well, it's not a spoiler to say, I would just say there were times where like my heart was wrenching in my chest. Yeah, you're right. I mean, that relationship is one of the best relationships in the book, and it's between a man and his 2 oxen.
Yeah, it's amazing. And then we have Anna in Constantinople, who works for a seamstress, and has a sister who's like really good at it, but she's not. So she kind of just sneaks out and goes to this like old part of the city and like, I guess like steals things with the help of this other guy. And you don't really know where this is going. But you have a feeling that Omir and Anna are going to interact in some way. And I thought that was really satisfying, the way that happened.
So, I mean, I don't know if you felt the same way, but I sort of felt like the overall theme for all 6 of these people, and even for the main character in the Greek tragedy, they're all looking for something, right? Omir is just trying to look for a place. You know, he's been treated poorly by people because of his hair lip. You know, superstition comes into play. And he's sort of taken from his family and he doesn't know where he's going to belong. Anna's looking, you mentioned her sister. It's like needlework almost that they do, right? Like really intensive needlework.
Yeah, like embroidery for, I think it was like religious Orthodox, like garments for the priest stuff.
Yeah. Well, and her sister becomes ill. And so Anna's doing things and searching for these texts because she gets paid in order to try to different ways to heal her sister, you know. And then we have the names. That's what's going to eventually wind up killing me. Zeno, who is trying to put on this play. It's like his sort of, but he also throughout the whole book is just trying to find out who he is. And we
Yeah.
learn that as a youth when he's living with his father. And then as sort of life goes on, he goes into war and he doesn't ever, that's not the words. He's still trying to figure out how to sort of present himself as a person,
Right.
throughout the whole book. And then Seymour is obsessed with what we're doing to our environment. And he's looking for a way to stop the destruction of the world we live in, which is such an interesting parallel to Constance in the future, because they've had to leave Earth because of what we've done to the planet. And Constance is just looking for answers. Like she just doesn't know what the heck is going on.
She's young. Is she like 12 or
12, I think, yeah.
Yeah. And so she's really young, and they've left Earth, going to colonize this new planet that they found. And on her, she might even have been 10, because at the beginning she celebrates her library day where she gets access to the ship's library, and she learns some stuff about what's going on the ship for real. And she's with her family on this ship, her mom and dad, and then something goes wrong, and so they're searching for like a new world. Zeno's searching for identity, his legacy, what that means for him. Seymour's searching. Omir and Anna, they're both searching. I would say that's like a big theme in the book.
Yes, very much. I think we could just take a moment and talk about the library day and the library on the spaceship. It's like this digital virtual reality library where you really become immersive in books, and Constance becomes obsessed with an atlas. And what Anthony Doerr does so well is to make it all make sense. She goes to places like Constantinople. She goes to places in the that we're seeing in other stories, and it all starts to come together. But I want that library.
Wouldn't that be amazing?
It was a phenomenal idea. It was well described and so visceral and so amazing. And I was like, if that's what the future holds, let's go.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think the library and libraries are a theme through the book too. Like, what does a library mean? What does it mean to take care of, our legacy, our literature, even our planet? Like, with the fall of Constantinople, a lot of the Greek plays were lost, like in real life, not just in this story, but like, there was a long time before like people were able to access like ancient Greece and like those texts and stuff. And so it was a big loss when that city fell. And so that kind of has parallels with like the environment and the reasons why like Constant leaves Earth. And the connections were amazing on how they were subtle in a lot of ways. There were a lot of subtle connections, but really powerful.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. When I finished this book, I started thinking about the fact that humanity never learns. We've gone through time and we destroy things that take away from the history that is our planet. And we've never, like every time there's, been a war, major pieces of the cultures of all different types of people are destroyed. And we never think about the repercussions of that to the future. And that just parallels into Seymour's discussion regarding what we're doing to the planet. And it's like we should be at a point where we recognize the actions we take today affect the future. And what Anthony Doerr does is he puts that into your head. Look, in Constantinople, they didn't think about this. And look what happened to Greek history. We're not thinking about it right now. And then in the future, we don't think about it so much so that we have to flee our planet. And so it just becomes like this, like, come on, people. Start thinking about how your actions affect the future.
Yeah. I think that's a big part of this. And we get like a lot of different ages. We get Constance when she's very young. We get Zeno when he's, I think, in his 80s,
80s, yeah.
like late 80s or something. So like we get kind of a range of different people, different backgrounds, like different perspectives, but all around these same themes of stewardship and taking care of things that we have the power to control right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just, to go back to what you said, all of this stuff is discussed. This book is deep in a lot of ways, but you said in the beginning, it is compulsively readable.
Yeah.
You want to know what's going to happen to these characters. You want good things for them, or you want their, outcomes to be different. And you can just turn the pages too. Like that's this kind of book.
Yeah. Yeah, I was surprised how readable it was. Like, it was very compelling. I read it in a few days. I didn't want to put it down. And for something that's, nominated for awards and really big and has like a convoluted kind of story, like I was impressed at just how much of a page turner this really was.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. So if you don't know, viewers, this book is shortlisted for the National Book Award. And his last book won the Pulitzer. So Anthony Doerr writes some books that people respond to clearly. And when I first thought about this book up for awards, I was like, I got lost in just the story and the plot. But when you stop to think about it, you watch, it's the mastery of dissecting the world and how you can really see that through what he does, that I think ups this book, like brings it to that next level.
Yeah, and I think he does a really good job balancing the connections between the stories without making it too confusing or too overwhelming. Like, it's really just these three separate stories of, two people each. And so it's not super big. It's not like there's like 85 characters you really have to know.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's really kind of self-contained in a really smart way. And it has something for everybody. It has science fiction going into the future in space. It has historical fiction in 15th century Constantinople. It has present day kind of contemporary drama. I thought that Zeno's story was maybe the most moving for me. I really liked his story, and I don't want to give anything away about that, but stick with it because his story is great.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. I mean, Zeno really, to me, is the one that I don't think it's any spoiler to say that, certain characters just sit in your heart and they can break it a little bit and you really feel for them. And Zeno's that sort of the heart of this book to me, because he does live 80 years. So we do get a very good snapshot of 80 years of this man's life. So even though he's not the only character, we get to know him very well. And some of the stuff just rings super true and real.
Yeah.
And I think that that's very powerful. And that's the brilliance of the book. There's such a humanity to it, as on top of all of these bigger things that are going on.
Yeah, even somebody who, like Seymour, who may be considered like the villain in this, like, he's developed in such a way that you really feel for him. He has a tough life growing up. He has only his mom taking care of him, who doesn't have a lot of money. And he has this owl that it's a wild owl, but he calls him trusty friend and is like kind of his only friend. And so the way that was written, you feel what Seymour was doing. And it wasn't just like black and white, good and bad. Like, it was very It was very nuanced. I really appreciated that.
Well, I mean, just talking about Seymour makes me realize, and this is like the onion that is this book, alienation and sort of loneliness is also very much a theme in this book, and how one deals with feeling isolated and separated. Omir deals with it, Seymour deals with it, Zeno deals with it in his own way, Constance most 100% deals with it very much so. And what do you do with that sense of isolation and loneliness, and how do you sort of manipulate's not the right word, but what do you do with that situation to make yourself? And I totally agree. Seymour is set up, the first thing, and this is not a spoiler, the first time we meet him, he's walking into a library with a homemade bomb in his backpack. He's going to do something bad. But when you start to learn about him, it is heartbreaking the reason he's there. And that's, I think, the thing that was so amazing. Again, I go back to all of these characters are so human. So, yeah, it's so good.
It's really good. And then there's periods of lightness too that I really enjoyed. Constance's interaction with the ship computer Sybil was really funny at parts. And I really liked her frustration with Sybil when she tried to get her to do certain things. It's all around just a really good, well-balanced book. And I'm so glad we read it.
Yeah, there's humor, there's romance, there's sadness, there's conflict. It's just got all of this stuff going on. And you're like, and just what you said, it's a long book, but it almost needed to be, because you needed all of this to work out. But in the end, I think it's one of my favorite books I've read this year.
Yeah, me too. It was really good. Really well done.
So this is only our second one. So how are we rating these books by
I think last time we gave them thumbs up. Thumbs down.
Let's just do that. And I can confidently say that this is definitely a thumbs up for me.
Thumbs up from me. I recommend everybody read this. I think there's something for everybody. It's literary, but not too difficult to read. It's got so much to offer that I think everybody will find something that connects with them.
Absolutely. And I can vouch for the audiobook. I did listen to the audio while I read it, and the audiobook has a different narrator. And it's excellent. So definitely.
Like, does it have different narrators per section?
I think so. It's been a long time since I read it. I know that I can, in my mind, still remember two distinct narrators. I can't remember if they just do all of the different voices, but I just remember them getting the humanity of the book really, really well. So
that's great.
Yeah. So Ryan and I promise that there will come a day where we will have a more derisive conversation regarding a book. We just happen to have picked two books in a row that we liked quite a bit.
Yeah, and honestly, like, talking about books I like is more fun than talking about books I hate, because
that is absolutely true. And let's be honest, neither of us like to tear anything apart. That's just not our nature.
Yeah, and if it's not working, I tend not to finish it. So it's hard to talk about. But we'll see. We do have differing opinions on some of our book club books. So
that is true. That is true.
Happen.
It could happen. Well, everyone, as always, I want to thank Ryan for being here today for episode number 2 of Ryan and Russell Read and Review. I hope you're liking these, and I hope you come back to see whatever we read next month. So until next time, happy reading, everyone.
Bye.